A troublesome security guard starts working at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, and during his first night on the job, he will realize that the night shift will not be so easy to overcome. That's why today in the summary, Five Nights at Freddy's and the brothers created Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, a very particular restaurant with quite creepy animatronics where something went wrong in a strange circumstance. 5 children disappeared and were never found. So Freddy Fazbear's Pizza closed forever and never reopened. So now we look like a security guard who works in that old pizzeria who we see running scared until he is caught. And now it turns out that he loses consciousness and wakes up in a trap that ends his life. To now show us a drawing stuck to the wall of the Yellow Rabbit, the leader of Spring Boney, along with 5 children who are the ones who disappeared in the pizzeria. After this, we will meet Michael Schmidt, also known as Mike, who wakes up after a difficult night. After not being able to sleep well, he immediately goes to eat, where he meets a guy who tries to follow his conversation. But upon seeing a child alone in the middle of the shopping center, he brings to light his past traumas and begins to pursue him. Until seeing the man accompanying him, Mike hits him, thinking otherwise, when in reality, it was simply his son. So they take him to the police station. So now he obviously loses his job. And Mike asks the human resources employee to help him get him a new job. And the interesting thing comes now because this guy remembers that there is a job as a security guard at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, the abandoned restaurant. But Mike rejects it because this job is at night, and our protagonist doesn't have the best sleep. After this, Mike returns home to see his sister Abby, where we meet Maxine, the nanny who takes care of her. And now, while we see the sister drawing strange things, she tells Mike to be careful with his friend, because apparently he has imaginary friends that will be important later. But now Mike simply goes back to sleep, to have a strange dream, where he explains his traumas to us. It turns out that they were all happy, until inadvertently their brother named Garrett was kidnapped, which led to their mother dying shortly after and their father abandoning them. The next morning, Mike wakes up and has to go to mediate with his Aunt Jane, who wants to take away his sister's custody due to her mental problems and lack of work. And here we find out that the aunt only wants to have Abby so that the government can give her a support check later. Mike, overwhelmed by this, and with a lawsuit looming over him where he would clearly lose possession of Abby, has no choice but to call the manager at work and accept the wonderful job as security at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. As he goes to the place, the boss gives him a brief description of the place, which is an old abandoned pizzeria in the 80s, where drunks and people from bad living come in and are destroying it. So his only job is to make sure that no one enters. After this, Mike begins his night's work at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, where on the first night, he already receives a welcome from the animatronics. There he plays an old safety instructional video, which cuts out in the middle. So when he goes to look for some safety tools, he gets his first scare with balance. Boy. Tonight, Mike knows that he won't be able to sleep because this place hides something. So he takes the flashlight and goes to investigate until he finds 3 animatronics. Bonnie Chica, and of course, Freddy Fazbear. But now nothing happens. So now Mike sleeps and has the same recurring dream where his brother got lost, but this time with a new peculiarity. In his dream, there are the 5 children who disappeared at the pizzeria in 80. But before there can be any more, he wakes up in the morning and returns home to see his sister. Meanwhile, the evil aunt meets with the babysitter, who was actually an imposter, because she was there only to find evidence that incriminates Mikey as a bad guardian, and thus be able to get him custody. The thing is that they couldn't find anything for him. So now Jeff, the babysitter's brother, proposes a plan which is to destroy the pizzeria so that they can take Mike's job away and lose ownership. Meanwhile, the other night, Mike falls asleep at work as usual, and has that traumatic dream again. But this time it gets more interesting, because when he goes after a child and catches him, he hits him and seriously wounds his arm, and then sees how his eyes bleed, which makes him wake up already in real life. He hears a particular song from Five Nights at Freddy's, which stuns him quite a bit. So scared, he turns off the electricity and restarts it. But before anything else happens, someone knocks on the door. There we meet Vanessa Shelley, a police officer, who, from the start, makes him see that the wound in the dream is in real life. And after healing him, she tells him that he should be cautious and take good care of himself, since the previous security guards did not last long. Now our new protagonist introduces Freddy Fazbear, Foxy Boney, and Chica, who in turn had Mr. Cupcake. Then the police arrest them, and they start dancing, but soon the power goes out. After this, in the morning, Vanessa says goodbye, but not before telling her that she must be careful because Freddy Fazbear's Pizza always hides something more than the obvious. Mike goes home, but of course at the same time, Jeff's plan had been put into motion to give custody to Aunt Jane since he had hired more criminals. And they arrive at the pizzeria minutes after our couple leaves. When they enter, they start destroying absolutely everything. So now the fun begins. But not only for the criminals, because the first criminal to leave this world is received by a cupcake as a welcome. And immediately, a girl appears who, after scaring him, makes this toy cake eat him. The second to meet our heroes is the chubby guy who is visited by Bonnie and locked in a metal room to quickly eat him. The screams of his friends are heard by the leader. Jeff, who's scared, does not know what is happening, so he begins to try to escape. Jeff sees them through the surveillance cameras, but the animatronics also see him. And since they know his location, we see Chica send Mr. Cupcake through the ventilation duct so that he can eat Jeff. And although he does not succeed, Foxy is relentless and bosses him around with his friend. But of course, since they didn't go out and took too long, Maxine, the babysitter, comes in to see what's happening with her brother and his accomplices. When he enters, he doesn't find anyone. And out of nowhere, he sees a boy running who tells him to follow him. So now Freddy Fazbear receives her and doesn't even scare her. He just stands still, waiting for her to get close so he can literally eat her head off. On the other hand, at home, Ivy finds the possession documents. So she asks her brother not to give her away because he has Jane. She is very bad, and he does. Conversation is interrupted when Vanessa arrives to tell him that someone entered the pizzeria. She also shows him her sleeping pills, making it clear that she forgot to close the door. And it was her fault that the criminals entered. Now, to talk and further explain what was happening to him. He takes her to a stream, where he tells her about his childhood and the whole sad story behind his brother Garrett. And there, Vanes throws away his sleeping pills, making it clear that he no longer needs them, and that he should be alert in the pizzeria today. That night, Mike decides to take little Abby to work to accompany him, and while she sleeps, he begins to organize and clean everything caused by the criminals. But when the clock strikes 4 in the morning, a robot that we do not see approaches Abby, waking her up and inviting her to visit the place at the same time. In his dreams, Mike finds a boy who disappeared in the 80 years and asks him for information about his little brother, but the boy tells him that he will help him in exchange for something before he reveals what he wants in return. Mike wakes up because he hears his sister Avi screaming, so he goes to save her. But false alarm, because she was screaming with happiness, playing with the animatronics. Still, he makes his sister say goodbye, and then takes her home. The next morning, Mike realizes that his sister had been drawing the 5 lost boys, and a strange yellow rabbit, and everything makes sense to him. During breakfast they talk, and Abby remembers that she also had dreams, and that she knew about her brother Garrett, although the family never talked about him. Mike asks Abby to ask her friends, that is, the ghosts of the missing children, about the whereabouts of her brother Garrett. Or rather, the whereabouts of the guy who kidnapped him. Abby tells him that she will do it by revealing that all his friends are ghosts that now occupy the bodies of the animatronics. At night, Mike arrives with Abby, and the police patrol was outside. So when they come in, they greet all the robots and have some fun while going to look for something at the props. Mike, with Vanessa, find another animatronic on the floor known as Puppet. But this one was lifeless and needed a host. At that moment, something more interesting happens, because while Abby was dancing with the animatronics, she approaches Boney and wants to play her guitar, but she is electrocuted and loses consciousness. However, then he wakes up and apparently it was nothing serious ending the night. Vanessa asks Mike to never attract Abby again, as he is more dangerous than he thinks. That is why the next morning, Mike wakes up Abby to tell her that Aunt Jane will now have her custody. However, the girl did not want her and gets so upset with her brother Mike that she scratches all her drawings where he appeared. At night, while Mike sleeps, he is taken to another dream where his entire happy family is, and the usual boy appears, offering him that this reality can be his every night when he sleeps. But in exchange, he asks for his sister Abby. And surprisingly, Mike accepts, without knowing that now the animatronics will want to take her over. Later, Abby was at Aunt Jane's house, when suddenly, things get more interesting, as we soon saw the Freddy Fazbear doll behind Aunt Jane. At the same time, the Dream Boy appears in Abby's room, telling her that they should go play since her animatronic friends miss her, so she accepts. They get into a taxi, and with the doll, they go to the pizzeria. At the same time, Mike is still injured in his dreams, and as he wants to reject the treatment he had previously accepted, the children in the dream begin to attack him and leave serious wounds all over his body. This is how he later wakes up and now finds himself next to the corpses previously killed by the dolls. But now he faints due to a new attack by the dolls. And later, Vanessa wakes him up, treating his wounds. But now Mike reveals that Abby is in danger because she accepted the deal the children proposed to her in the dream. Then Vanessa tells her that the robots want to stay with her and tells us the truth about how these children were kidnapped by William Upton, who was actually their father. Hearing this, Mike ties up all the loose ends and now understands why she knew too much about this pizzeria. We even see a photo of him dressed as a rabbit with her when she was a child. Mike reproaches him since he knew the truth all along, and it was this man who kidnapped his brother Garrett. So at this, Mike gets up and goes to the pizzeria to save his sister. Before leaving, Vanessa gives him some weapons and tells him to enter through a duct and to be very attentive, since all the animatronics obey his father's orders. Thus, we see Mike drive at full speed in the police patrol car to the pizzeria where Abby was with Freddy, ready to enter. When they enter, the doll starts singing, starting the ritual, while Chica slowly takes her to a dark passage. Mike enters through the back and pours water on Freddy and Bonnie to electrocute them with a taser, while Chica arrived with Abby to an old room where Puppet was. His plan was to give him life when he absorbed the girl's soul. But at that moment, Mike arrives and prevents this by electrocuting Chica so that they both escape. However, when they were running, Mr. Cupcake bites Mike's leg, making it difficult for him to escape. But our protagonist manages to electrocute him as well. In the main room, Abby was very scared, and soon Foxy appears to catch her, and when it seems that it is the end for her, Vanessa appears electrocuting the doll and saves the girl. But here things get more interesting, since from the dark area appears Spring Bonnie the yellow rabbit. The leader, he begins to beat up Mike, and at that moment, Vanessa arrives to confront her father. She was tired of all the damage her father did and shoots him. But to keep her out of his way, William stabs his daughter Vanessa's belly. At that moment, the old man orders the animatronics to kill everyone, but Mike tells Abby to show his friends how old William really is the bad guy. He kidnapped them all and killed them by trapping them in these bodies for all eternity. So now Abby makes a new drawing where the yellow rabbit was the bad guy and sticks it on the mural. And now that all the animatronics know the truth, they rebel against him, and now they beat him until the yellow rabbit suit completely absorbs him, destroying his entire body. Finally, everyone is happy, and the protagonists are safe because Abby goes to school and has real friends. Vanessa ended up in a coma because of what her father did to her, and Mike tries to rebuild his life. But of course, there is something more important because in the end, the ghost boy finds the old man in the yellow rabbit suit being completely absorbed, becoming Springtrap. That is the future and worn-out version of Spring Boney's suit. That was Five Nights at Freddy's. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment on which movie you would like me to summarize.